I mean, modern environmentalists have become a cult of Luddites opposed to every development made to make life more comfortable for human beings, and they can't be reasoned with. They're blinded by ideology and an anti-human outlook. They can't be dismissed either, as they're occupying the halls of power in both the government and the corporate world. They're imposing their crazed policies, and they are crazy, and citizens are suffering because of it. Their sights are most commonly set on climate change, and it's a convenient boogeyman for their cause. They can and do blame everything on climate change. I mean, from racism to obesity to weather events. I know that sounds exaggerated, but I invite you to look it up. They blame everything on it. Climate change is a catch-all term, and when coupled with the word emergency, of course, policymakers then feel justified in pushing the most extreme and harmful of policies. One of Trudeau's top men is Stephen Guilbeault. Guilbeault is an extremist, well known for being led away in handcuffs in his orange prison jumpsuit, as you can see in that picture there, while he manically grins after he's performed yet another extreme and criminal action, ostensibly in the fight against climate change. Normally, such a record would halt a developing political career. In Canada, it got him a senior cabinet position in the government. Guilbeault doesn't feel a ban on plastic cutlery goes far enough. He wants all disposable cutlery to be gone, whether compostable or not. Have no fear, though, he has a solution. He says we should eat with our hands. You can't make this sort of thing up. The climate change cult completely ignores the benefits of modern energy sources. Reliable, affordable energy is essential for the survival of the developed world. Eco-fanatics live in a crazed world of denial and hold this romanticized visions of a blissful past where humans lived in harmony with nature and had no impact upon it. They love to push visions of First Nations people living that way, for example. Now let's get back to reality. 300 years ago, the average lifespan for an Indigenous person in North America was under 30 years. They were typically nomadic foragers and hunters, and they were at the mercy of nature. Famines were common, as were deaths from exposure to extreme elements and territorial wars as starving tribes fought over limited resources. And I'm not faulting these people for the conditions they lived in. It was just part of every, human culture that came up. But I do want people to understand life before modern energy was no paradise for human beings at all. I don't expect we're going to be driven back to the Neolithic levels of human development, but we're having our advances reversed. An obsessive anti-oil and gas movement has been shutting down production of affordable energy throughout the developed world. Europe's in an energy crisis right now, and they're going to be suffering as winter is starting to loom. And this can't all be blamed on Russia. Europe was facing an energy crisis well before the first Russian soldier headed west into Ukraine. Germany was advising its citizens to learn how to cook over a candle in 2021 due to the energy shortage then. The reason Germany is in such dire straits is they brought in and bought into the environmental religion in full. They spent hundreds of billions on supposed sustainable energy sources such as wind and solar. They inexplicably shut down their nuclear generating capacity on the advice of eco-cultists, then discovered they were as dependent on fossil fuels as ever. And now we're totally beholden to Russia for their energy sources while they scramble to try and reopen coal plants. Germany was warned. The rest of Europe was warned. Your engineers and business people have tried to tell them there wasn't a viable replacement for conventional energy sources. It didn't matter. The climate cult ignored reason and went ahead with their self-destructive policies. Despite the stark failure of Europe's green energy efforts, Canada is insistent on following on the same path. I mean, while the world's begging for our oil and gas, we're shutting it in. While Dutch farmers revolt and Sri Lanka's government fell due to environmentally driven fertilizer bans, Trudeau wants to do the same thing here. Quislings in the corporate world are falling over themselves trying to appease the green cult, and it won't work. While auto manufacturers commit to ending production of gas-powered vehicles, electrical vehicles are nowhere close to becoming a viable alternative. While oil and gas companies impose ever harsher emission controls upon themselves, the climate cult still demands that they be shut down. They're not going to win, guys. Meanwhile, the cost of energy continues to climb and contribute to an increased cost of living for the entire world. The Luddites and the climate cult are winning. They're dragging human advancement backwards, and they don't care about the human cost. Now, while I don't expect we're going to end up back in medieval times, we're heading in that direction. The only question is how far we're going to let the climate cult and their cultists, it's time to start labeling them for what they are. And how far are we going to let them pull us back before we stand up for ourselves and say that's enough? We should learn from the Sri Lankan citizens. Unfortunately, people are going to have to get colder and hungrier before they realize what they really bought into with this green new world.